Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a really tragic and honestly complex accident. Jeju Air Flight 2216. That's the Boeing 737-800 crash.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying my videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you'll always know when I upload something new. And if you want to go the extra mile to support the channel, check out my Patreon. Your support truly means everything to me. Thanks so much for watching.
At Muan International Airport, back on December 29, 2024.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Our aim here is to sort of step back from the initial shock and headlines. We've got the interim report, some video analysis, expert system breakdowns.
Right.
And we want to use those to really understand the technical chain of events that led to such a catastrophic end.
Because the basic story is just so baffling. You had this plane, 181 people on board, seems like a totally normal approach after a long flight. Then a go-around standard enough procedure, right? Safety maneuver. But minutes later, it belly lands way down the opposite runway, gear still up.
And the result, 179 fatalities. It's that sudden, awful turn of events we need to unpack piece by piece based on the evidence.
Okay, let's set the scene. The aircraft itself, a Boeing 737-800, about 15 years old, HL8088. It used to fly for Ryanair, interestingly.
And the flight was coming in from Bangkok, so about 4 hours in the air. Crew seemed experienced. Captain had, what, over 6,800 total hours?
Yeah, 2,500 as pilot in command. First officer had around 1,650 hours. But that arrival time, early morning.
That's often flagged in accident investigations, yeah. Early morning approaches can coincide with periods of lower crew alertness. It's a known factor in human performance.
And there's a Muan airport itself. Its location is key here.
Absolutely. Right near the coast, wetlands, mudflats. Basically prime territory for migratory birds. You've got Yongsan Lake nearby too.
It's not just a general risk, is it? The stats are quite specific.
They are. Muan apparently has the highest bird strike rate among South Korea's 14 regional airports. It's like 0.09%, so a known hotspot.
So 8:54 a.m. local time, they're cleared to land on runway 01, and then they get this broadcast. Caution bird activity.
Standard stuff in places like Muan. It tells the pilots, hey, be extra vigilant, but it's not usually an order to stop the approach. It's just eyes open.
But just 4 minutes later, around 8:58 a.m., vigilance wasn't enough. They're configured for landing maybe 500 to 900 feet up.
And they fly right into a large flock of birds. Video caught it. You can see puffs of smoke, big ones from the right engine, number 2. And later analysis showed a smaller puff from the left, number 1 as well.
This wasn't just a few small birds hitting the windshield. The investigation found bicowl teals, a type of migratory duck. Pretty substantial birds ingested into both engines.
Right. Single engine ingestion is common enough, usually manageable, but dual ingestion, that's incredibly rare and severe. You mentioned an anecdote from the sources.
Yeah, the classic grim sign in the 737 cockpit or cabin after a bird ingestion, apparently, the smell of fried chicken. Tells you something at the hot section.
A very visceral indicator, and the crew knew instantly they were in deep trouble. Seconds after impact, one of the pilots calls, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.
Followed by bird strike, go around. So immediate reaction, trying to climb away, reconfigure.
Exactly. But this is where things get incredibly murky for investigators and why the technical analysis is so vital. Right after that Mayday call, the plane essentially goes dark electronically.
Or cow.
The ADS-B signal, the public tracking signal, gone. And critically, both the flight data recorder, the FDR, and the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, they stopped recording, all within about 10 seconds of each other, around 08.58.50 to 0.56 local time.
Whoa! ADS-B, CVR, and FDR, all at once.
Pretty much simultaneously, that pattern, it screams major electrical failure, a loss of the main AC or alternating current power supply.
But hang on, don't planes have backup batteries for this stuff? I thought recorders and transponders were designed to keep working if the engines quit.
They do have batteries, yes, for essential flight instruments and systems, minimum 60 minutes usually. But the main AC power comes from generators driven by the engines, or the auxiliary power unit, the APU.
Yep.
The FDR and CVR typically run off that main AC bus. If you lose AC power and the APU isn't running yet, they need their own backup power to keep recording.
And this plane maybe didn't have that.
It was built in 2009. The rule requiring RIPS, that's a recorder independent power supply, specifically to keep the CVR going for 10 minutes after total power loss, that came in around 2010. So it's very possible this aircraft, being built just before, wasn't equipped with it.
So birds take out both engines, kills the generators, no APU running yet.
Yeah.
Boom. No main AC power, and the recorders likely stop almost immediately.
That seems to be the most logical explanation for losing all three systems at once. They were suddenly flying on battery power alone for many systems.
Okay, so if they're basically a big glider on batteries, what does that actually do to the plane systems? What stops working?
It's devastating for landing. Think about how a 737 operates. Primary flight controls ailerons, elevators, rudders. They need hydraulic pressure. Landing gear extension, hydraulics, flaps. Hydraulics or electric standby, which also needs AC. Spoilers, same. Thrust reversers, forget it.
And the hydraulics, they come from the engines, right?
Primarily, Engine 1 drives hydraulic system A, Engine 2 drives system B. Both systems also have electric backup pumps.
Which need the AC power that just disappeared.
Exactly. So engines out means engine pumps are out. AC power out means electric pumps are out. They suddenly have zero hydraulic pressure for almost everything critical for landing and control.
So how are they flying the plane at all?
They're forced into what's called manual reversion. It's the absolute backup. Basically, cables and pulleys, like an old light aircraft, bypassing the dead hydraulic actuators.
Manual reversion sounds like hard work.
Extremely hard work. You're using pure muscle power to move the control surfaces on a large jetliner. The controls become incredibly heavy, sluggish, difficult to manage precisely. Remember those videos showing the plane making small S-turns as it tried to line up again?
Yeah, I saw that mentioned.
That's characteristic of manual reversion. Those small weaving movements often result from the heavy, delayed inputs needed to wrestle the aircraft. They weren't just fighting dead engines, they were physically fighting the airplane itself.
God, 179 people. You just can't imagine the stress, the chaos in that cockpit, knowing you have maybe minutes, maybe less to figure this out.
And it directly impacts the decisions made during that go-around. Standard procedure, flaps 15, gear up quickly.
Right.
But video later showed the leading edge flaps were fully retracted, a clean configuration. That means they did manage to retract the flaps during the go-around, which implies they must have gained at least some altitude initially to do that.
But being clean is the opposite of what you want for landing, isn't it? It needs much higher speed.
Precisely. It's great for climbing away, terrible for slowing down to land, especially with no engines, and there's no official checklist for dual engine failure on final approach. The absolute priority becomes just keeping enough airspeed to avoid a stall. Landing short, landing rough, anything is better than stalling.
You mentioned simulator training. Shed some light here.
It really does. Instructors sometimes run these non-graded nightmare scenarios, dual bird strike, dual engine loss, low down. What they find is crews consistently lose a lot of altitude, maybe 1,800 feet or more, just trying to make the 180-degree turn back towards the runway. They're burning altitude fast, fighting the controls, trying to manage airspeed. It's a desperate situation.
In that sim scenario, what's the one thing, the absolute critical action that makes the difference?
Starting the APU immediately, like before the checklist might even prompt you.
The auxiliary power unit. Why is that so critical?
Because the APU has its own generator. Getting that APU online is the only way to restore AC power independent of the failed engines. And restoring AC power means you can run the electric hydraulic pumps.
So APU means hydraulics back online.
Potentially, yes. At least some hydraulic power via the electric pumps. Without the APU running, you are stuck in manual reversion and you have no way to power the systems for gear extension, flap deployment, or spoiler deployment.
So there's a trap. If you follow a standard engine failure checklist rigidly, you might start the APU too late.
It's a definite possibility. Crews in the simulator who delayed the APU start. They often managed the turn back using altitude, but they arrived over the runway high and fast because they were still clean.
And they couldn't slow down or get the gear out.
Right. They'd move the gear lever, but nothing would happen because there's no hydraulic pressure. Same with the flaps. They might only realize this very late in the approach.
Is there any way to get the gear down without hydraulics?
There is a manual extension system. It involves physically pulling wire cables, usually accessed through hatches in the cockpit floor, to release the gear up locks. The gear then hopefully drops down under its own weight.
Sounds complicated.
It is, and it's rarely practiced. In the middle of a high-stress dual-engine failure fighting the plane in manual reversion, it's very easy to forget or simply not have the time or physical capacity to do it.
And that speed. That seems to be what ultimately led to the overrun. They touched down, belly landing, 1,200 meters into the runway.
And remember, that runway was shortened for construction, only 2,500 meters available. Landing clean means their speed was probably around 200 knots. Hugely fast for touchdown.
What was the impact sequence like?
Tail struck first, then the engine nacelles hit and started grinding. Without landing gear, obviously, no brakes. But the other critical factor linked to the power loss was the spoilers.
The panels on top of the wings that pop up after landing.
Exactly. They kill the lift generated by the wings, helping plant the aircraft firmly on the runway and making the brakes effective. But they need hydraulic power driven by AC to deploy.
So no AC power, no spoilers.
Correct. Which means even after touchdown, the wings were still generating significant lift. The aircraft wasn't settling. It was effectively skimming along the runway surface on its belly, maintaining a lot of that high speed. It just kept going.
Like a stone skipping on water?
A very heavy, uncontrollable stone. It turned the remaining runway into just not enough space. They slid across the rest of the paved surface and the 300-meter clearway beyond.
And then hit that concrete structure, which became a huge point of contention afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. The aircraft slammed into a 4-meter-high concrete structure, part of the foundation for the instrument landing system's localizer antenna, about 250 meters past the end of the runway.
And safety experts were pretty blunt about that.
They were. Words like unbelievably awful were used. International safety standards strongly recommend that any structures in that area, the runway end safety area or clearway, must be frangible.
Meaning they should break apart easily on impact to minimize damage and injury.
Exactly. A solid concrete wall is the opposite of frangible. The argument from South Korean officials was that the runway originally met standards, and this kind of high-speed gear-up overrun was, completely unforeseen.
A sort of beyond design basis argument.
Right. Some even argued that if the wall hadn't been there, the plane might have continued into a road or populated area, potentially causing even more harm on the ground. But the consensus was clear. Non-frangible obstacles near runways are dangerous.
And it led to changes, didn't it?
It did. That structure at Muan was slated for removal and replacement. And they launched a review of similar structures at 7 other airports across South Korea. So a definite safety action came out of it.
Now, because the recorders stopped working so early, the investigation has been incredibly difficult. And that often leads to speculation.
Inevitably. We need to be careful and impartial here, but South Korean media did report around July 2025, that the Accident Investigation Board, the ARAIB, had preliminarily attributed the crash partly to pilot error.
What was the specific claim?
The report suggested one of the pilots might have mistakenly shut down the wrong engine, the relatively undamaged left engine, instead of the heavily damaged right one.
Oof. That's a serious allegation. How was that received?
Predictably, it drew strong criticism, especially from the Jeju Air Pilots Union. They argued quite reasonably that focusing early on potential pilot error without the full CVR-FDR data risks overshadowing systemic failures.
Like the catastrophic loss of controls we've been discussing, or the non-frangible barrier?
Exactly. It echoes what happened after the Lion Air 610 crash, the first 737 MAX disaster. Early focus was heavily on the pilots, before the full details of the MCAS system problems became widely understood. We really need the final, definitive report to understand the cockpit environment.
But there is one more piece of visual evidence from the videos of the crash landing itself that strongly supports the idea of a total systems failure. The rudder.
Yes, that's a key observation. Throughout that long, high-speed slide along the runway, video analysis showed the aircraft's rudder stand completely neutral, perfectly aligned with the vertical tail fin. It didn't move at all.
And why is that significant?
Moving the rudder on a 737 requires significant hydraulic power. There is a standby hydraulic system that can power the rudder as a backup.
Let me guess.
But that standby system's pump still requires AC electrical power to operate.
So a locked, centered rudder during that ground slide strongly suggests no AC power, therefore no standby hydraulics, therefore no rudder control whatsoever.
Precisely. It's another strong indicator confirming a total loss of AC power that persisted right through the impact sequence. The pilots likely had absolutely no directional control once the aircraft touched down.
Just passengers on an uncontrollable skid.
It really seems that way. An almost unimaginable chain of events. A common hazard birds triggers an immediate catastrophic electrical failure that paralyzes the hydraulic systems needed for control, for gear, for flaps, right at the worst possible moment.
When you lay it all out like that, the complexity is staggering. It wasn't just one thing. It was this cascade.
And I think the big takeaway here, even before the final report, isn't just about following checklists. It's about how these incredibly rare multi-failure scenarios really test a crew's ability to prioritize instantly, to understand the most critical failure in this case, probably the electrical loss, and take decisive action, like getting the APU started, perhaps even outside standard procedure sequence.
It highlights that need for deep system knowledge and quick, clear thinking under unimaginable pressure.
Yeah, the combination of the environmental hazard, the instant and total systems failure, the resulting loss of control authority, and then encountering that immovable object. It created a situation with almost no margin for survival.
A truly horrifying sequence. So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Without the black boxes, that direct evidence from the cockpit is missing. Of all the technical clues we discussed, those heavy S-turns during the attempt to return, the lack of forward-facing external lights seen in the videos, or that launch rudder during the final skid, which single piece do you think gives us the strongest, maybe the most chilling insight into what the pilots were truly battling inside that cockpit during those last minutes?
It's a difficult question, and one the final report will hopefully shed more light on. We'll certainly be watching for its release.
We will indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.